if you're a business owner thinking about the future, thinking about how do I make sure that I'm doing a good job growing my business, having it grow well, and in the future, even maybe considering to pass it on, sell it, or to exit. In this video, I'm going to be sharing a framework to transform your business from a job to having an asset. What is the difference, you might wonder? Well, a job is something that you have to work at. You show up to a job. If you don't get paid. However, an asset is something that typically grows and pays you, not necessarily requiring you to work at the job in order to get paid. So I find that it is easy for business owners to not really be thinking too much about the difference. And the outcome can be quite different when you are aware of these differences. It gives you way more flexibility to have an asset rather than have your business be just a job. So let's dive into the details of what this means. So perhaps we can start thinking about, first of all, why did you start doing your business? So for many people, they start a business because they are likely looking for, had a vision for how they can create income, doing the thing that they love, or, whether it's making the thing that they love or doing the things that they can love, and they found a way to create value and get paid for it. So many business owners, start their businesses in order to create an income, but also maybe you loved what you do, but wanted the flexibility and the complete control to design how you do it. So you may also be concerned about, wanting to have more control over when you do your work, how you do your work. And so flexibility and autonomy is often often the important criteria that I find entrepreneurs care about. And having your own business gives you that flexibility and gives you that autonomy. Another reason that, again, perhaps that you started your business is you thought about if you grew it and maybe one day it can become an asset that you have that you can sell, whether it's to other people and maybe you can sell it internally to staff or to within your family, or you can sell it externally and that perhaps you can quote unquote retire even from this business. And so what I found is that many business owners do a pretty good job starting their businesses and even growing their businesses. However, what they haven't often considered is just how to finish well. And so maybe you're watching this and you're not even thinking about exiting. Maybe that's really far away and you're thinking that's, maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now. But I would say, that even though there may be more pressing things that you're considering today, maybe there's even fires to fight, and that, unfortunately, finishing well is something that we have to think about more proactively. And because if you do this well, then, it's going to give you a lot more flexibility in the future. However, if that's not something that's on your mind, know that you are not alone. And in fact, I'm going to share some statistics with you. So I belong, I'm, belong with part of the Exit Planning Institute, and I'm a certified exit planning advisor. And so the Exit Planning Institute did some studies and found that actually, if you take a look at the screen here, 76% of business owners, they plan to transition the business in the next 10 years or so. As population ages, we find that more and more owners are thinking about transitioning. However, you can see that 49%, almost half of them, haven't actually thought about a transition plan or not really sure how this transition is going to happen. There's a lot of challenges when it comes to transition. Many don't really know how to do it, what to work on, and we'll talk a little bit more today about why it's very difficult even to think about how to do this well. And also, I find that if they don't do anything about the transition and don't plan it ahead of time, then eventually when the business is put up for sale, you can see the statistics here. 70% of the businesses that are put on the market do not sell. And I think largely, that's because the preparation hasn't been done and the business is not attracting the buyers, or the value of the business is not what the buyer expects. And so a large part of the market that have businesses for sale actually doesn't go through with it. And sometimes for businesses, even for those businesses that are owned by family members, with planning to have either children or next generation succeeding the business, the statistics is not better either. Even with close family members, from transitioning from first generation, the founders, to the second generation, only about 30% businesses successfully transition from first generation to second generation. And then the statistics is even more grim. To go from second generation to third generation, it's only about 12% that's successful. And I think that to go to the next generation, I believe that the numbers is something like 3%. So it's a really low percentage of businesses that transition well into the next generation, or the owners have a successful time doing that. So the statistics do certainly look very gloomy. And so why do we think that's the case? So I think that there are a number of factors that I have seen or have observed that play into this, because it often takes actually some planning to transition well. And I find that you can see the first factor here is often a lot of businesses rely on the business owner. When I work with clients, sometimes I get them to do this exercise where I say, hey, can you build an org chart in your company and show me what are the departments, what are the roles within your business? And we're not talking about, Joe is working here and Susie is working here and Lily is working here. We're talking about, let's pretend that you are firing everybody, and then you get to build your organization from scratch with job titles. The CEO, here's the COO, this is the VP of sales, and here's your, finance department. If you could build it from scratch, what would that organization look like? And once they've done that, I get them to put in their names. I go, what do you do in your organization, and where do your name show up in here? And it's surprising to me how often, usually the business owners are probably doing multiple jobs, and in some cases, even 5 to 6 jobs within their own company. And especially if these are founders, first generation business owners that started everything from scratch, they started everything. And so they know how to do everything. And in a lot of cases, they are still doing many things in their company. And so along the way, a lot of this knowledge is also in their head. They're not necessarily written down and not systematized. And so no one else can probably do it as well as they can. So, much of the time, the business is actually quite reliant on the owner in order to sustain itself, in order to continue to create and provide value. The second common factor that I notice is that when it comes to transitioning or retiring or selling the business, the valuation of the business is often not as high as what the owner would expect. And often, if they were to sell their business, the amount of money that they get cannot actually replace the income that they get. For example, let's say if you hired a chartered business evaluator, they come in and do an analysis of your business, and they figure out some sort of formula for figuring out how much your business is worth if you get to sell it. And so this is usually, can be, the formula can be based on various factors. Sometimes it's a multiple of revenue. Sometimes it's a multiple of EBITDA, or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Or it could be based on how much assets, inventory that you have in the business. Regardless, there's some formula that they can give you that tells you how much your business is worth. And often I find that this number is usually, let's say around 2 to 5 times maybe what the owner is paying themselves. So then, for example, if they sell it, then maybe that amount can sustain their income for maybe a couple of years. And then they think about, well, what do I do after that if I don't have any other income? So often, because the owner is now relying on the business to provide them income, and selling the business doesn't attract such a high valuation, especially if, factor one, the owner is very much relying on the business is relying on the owner to run it. And so they find that they're trapped. They cannot really sell it, and they have to keep working in it in order to generate value in the business and continue to pay themselves. And then another observation I've also made is that often, even if some clients do have good valuation, they do have very good roles, the business is running, but they themselves have built a business that often is their baby, and they enjoy working in it, and they've worked in it most of their lives, and they can't really imagine, they're feeling healthy. And so they know that down the road they probably should do some work in terms of selling it, but really they don't really want to sell it. They say that they do, but when I ask them, well, what are you going to do afterwards after you sell your business, they don't really know. It's probably still pretty fun, I think, to run a business, especially if you've done a good job, designing it. You've designed it in a way where you're doing the things that you love. And then why sell it? What am I going to do afterward? I can't imagine my life without the business. So for this reason, again, usually we push that down the road. We don't consider selling it. We keep doing what we're doing until such time as you can't, right? Whether it's for health reasons, or they're getting older, or all of a sudden they find that they don't have as much energy, and now when they want to sell it, it becomes a bit more urgent, and the time frame is a bit shorter, and so it becomes even more difficult to get good value for your business. So so what happens with this is that if we think about, here's a 3-circle model. I love these 3-circle models because it shows you how there are 3 areas that a business owner actually need to work on in order to transition their business well. And often, unless all 3 of these areas are done well, it's the reason why transition sometimes is very difficult. So if you take a look at, today maybe the business is generating 100% of your income. And in the future, we want to consider, is this always going to be the case? So if there's a day that we do want to sell the business or want to transition it, then where's our income going to come from? And so here's 3 questions that I would ask, and we're going to dive into each of these circles in more detail and talk about what can we do in each of these areas of focus to make the business transition, or make the business become more of an asset rather than a job. So the first question I would ask you is in the green circle here, in the business circle, is, can your business run without you? That's the first thing to consider. And if the business cannot run without you, then obviously, it's a job and you have to show up and do the work. The second question is in this bluish circle is, can you run without your business? And so it's a bit of a funny play on the words there. But also, in many cases, as I mentioned, that even if the business can run without you, but if we haven't done the planning to figure out where the business owner's personal income is going to come from after quote unquote retirement or selling the business, then often they're stuck with still needing the job, right? Still needing that income to come from their business because they can't lose that. And, that changes their personal lifestyle quite a bit. And then the last question is actually the most important one. And this has to do with having a vision of, what does your personal life or your family life, what does that look like after retirement? And so do you have a strong vision for what your role will be if you were not to do what you were to do today? And so most people, I find that our business owners typically actually do enjoy doing their work. And so then they haven't maybe thought too much about, in the next chapter, what do I want to do? And that often is a key reason why there hasn't been this impetus or urgency to even work on business planning and succession until maybe it gets a bit late. And so again, this is very common because we often, tend to work on the things that are urgent. And so when it comes to making sure that your business grows and becomes an asset, it often is something that is important, but not super urgent. There's always, something that's more urgent that you can work on. However, it's good to be aware that if we spend time working on this, then it can help us create more flexibility in the future. So what are some of the strategies that we can think of if you happen to be, have bought in that, yes, I do want to make sure that my business is something that can become an asset for me. I don't want to be stuck, working on it. I may enjoy the work, but I want to have the flexibility to choose to do the work rather than have to do the work. Then here are some strategies that I want to share with you to consider. So the first one has to do with taking a look at the business circle. So how do I turn my business from a job into an asset? The step one, I would say, is to know what your business stage is and what's the focus in your business. What should you focus on in order to turn your business into something that is that can run on its own. So I find that businesses typically go through, these common stages. And so when you're starting out, likely, we're focusing on survival. We're just trying to focus on creating revenue. And usually the focus there is on sales. And so marketing and sales, right? So the early days of starting a business and running a business is often completely focused on just getting clients, making sure that we are generating sales. And I find that often if we do a good job and sales, marketing and sales does a good job, then you get into a case where maybe the business is now very busy. And so, if it's stable and sometimes even, a bit too much business, then I find that at that stage, often what is stressed is the operation side of the business. And so then, then you have to, start thinking about like, how do I hire people to do the service delivery? How do I manufacture? How do I create products and services that are scalable and not kill me so that I'm not showing up to work with raccoon eyes and super tired? How do I get other people to support me in doing the services delivery and to make the products? So you may be working on, growing your operations or creating systems in your operation. And often, if we do well in that area, then we kind of create something that is sustainable. Then often I find that in the business, I always say that there's 4 different departments. There's your marketing and sales. That is often the first one that gets stressed in the beginning. If you do a good job, then your operations department will be stressed because then you have too much business. And then if you have figured out, how to do sales and marketing, and then you figure out how to do operations, where you probably need to hire people or have, extra cash injection to grow the business. And so often that can stress out the finances side of your company. And so you keep needing extra money to grow to scale your company. So once your business is sustainable and scalable, sometimes it's actually the leadership side that is stressful, right? Because as the company grows, as you're hiring more people, then you are also needing to revisit all these different departments over and over again to hit the next level of operations. So step 1 is to first of all be aware that in your business, what is the department that is being stressed right now? What's the business stage that you're in? And what are the strategies that I need to put in place to get it from one stage to the next stage? So this is often helpful, probably with a business coach. And it's something that we tend to cover with clients just to be aware of so that they know that with their revenues and with their profit, how to allocate that back into the business so that the business can get to the next level of profitability and sustainability and scalability. So that's step number 1. So step number 2, this one has to do with how do I turn, when I turn my business into asset. The second thing is that often I find as you are considering turning it from a job to an asset, it's likely that your job description will change. And so here's 4 types of roles that you may have in your company. And again, you may be doing all of these roles, or you may be just doing the first couple of stages. So when someone starts a business, typically they're the doer. They're doing everything in their business. And then as their business grows, they may be hiring people, and then they themselves become the manager. And as the business grows some more, they might be, need to learn more leadership skills about how to, not only how to manage the projects, but also how to create vision and communicate vision and lead the managers and lead their company. And ultimately, I find that as we consider transitioning, as we consider, this business that gets turned into an asset, it's more about how do we empower our team to be leaders and to do the work, to manage the work, and to actually lead the team. So often, your role will probably shift from something that's a doer into a manager, into a leader, and ultimately becoming a coach in your company, and maybe even having CEOs or COOs that are running your company, because then ultimately the business doesn't rely on you to run. So often the work that I find we have to do is actually to be aware of what's our role in the company, and to maybe actively fire yourself from some of the jobs that you have. Yeah. So what is the next step? The next step is also to ensure that in a way that the business can run without you, and that is running on not necessarily people, And so again, as an example, sometimes I find that when I ask someone, oh, who, what are the roles in your company? And instead of telling me the roles, they will say, oh, so and so, this person, runs the accounting department. So and so is my salesperson. So and so is in charge of, the warehouse, and they're doing the delivery. And so know that often if it's based on people rather than roles, and as they leave, then sometimes the role can't sustain because each person that comes and replaces them does something a bit differently. So the suggestion that I often give to clients is to build systems and processes and have your company run on processes rather than it running on people. So this might mean creating processes, doing documentation for how you, repeatedly do something, deliver the same level of service, but do it in a sustainable way and in a way that ensures that you have high quality. And so that might be writing SOPs, which are your standard operating procedures. And you might also want to create benchmarks within the company. So what are the things that we can tell that gives us a measurement of how the company is doing? So for to start off, there's three here. I think for most companies, you would want to measure how do we generate revenue in a consistent way, and then how do we manage our expenses so that we hit a certain number of profit, a certain level of profit. What's my revenue and profit goal on a year-to-year basis? And then how do I allocate that profit? Do I allocate that profit back into the business, maybe increasing expenses so that I can expand? Or am I paying myself a little bit more? Or am I taking that money and then putting it in something like a holding company so that I can, store it for in the future, so that if I wanted to use it for my retirement or use it to invest in other projects, then I have extra funds that I can use to do that. So the key here is to know what we're measuring and know that we have systems and processes in place so that our business can scale. And I think of it very much as think about it as a franchise. And so if you wanted to replicate it, if you're not there, can your business, do the things without you? Do you know currently what your role is in the business, and what's the next job you're going to fire yourself from the business so that it can run without you? So those are often some good questions to consider on the business side of the circle. So moving along, the next once that we've covered the on the business side, the next thing I find that for business owners that they typically hasn't considered is the second question, right? Can you run without your business? And so we're going to take a look at what to do in the second circle here on your personal finances. So in terms of the next strategy, so often I find that to consider how much is needed to exit from your business. Again, as I mentioned before, a lot of business owners can't exit from their business because that is 100% of their income. So for us to calculate, as a financial planner, when I work with business owners, we're thinking about in the future, how much do I have to accumulate and where should I accumulate this wealth so that in the future that it, it's going to give me an income? Well, the first thing to consider is actually to determine how am I going to exit from my business? And so option one is, is it something that is sellable? If your business is completely dependent on you, let's say you are a custom furniture maker and you're the only person that can build these furniture really well. Nobody else can build it like you. Well, guess what? In the future, when you're not working your business, you probably have to close it down because we're not teaching anybody how to build this furniture and we can only do it ourselves. And that is actually completely fine as an option, but it's just good to know, for us when we're doing financial planning, to know that, well, in the future, I don't think my business is going to be worth anything. So then one day, if I don't work on that, I better have something else that can supplement my income. Yeah. So step one is to figure out, am I just closing the business down, or do I have staff? Do I have children? Do I have a next generation family members that I plan to take this business over and that I can eventually pass this business to them? Or is it something that I'm actively looking to build so that in the future there's going to be a buyer whether it's a strategic buyer or someone that, wants to grow and happens to have, looking for assets, and that, what you do fits with what they need. And so whether we're closing down or selling internally or selling externally, knowing what options are available helps us to determine what else we do with it. So again, if your business is something that, we think we're going to fetch quite a good sum of money in the future, well, then we probably could invest more resources into the business side so that we can sell it for more. But if not, then we may want to have some backup options, because then if we're just closing down the business or it's not worth as much, we may want to have other areas that are providing us income in the future. So step one, figure out what's the exit option for your business. So the second step in this personal finances circle is to figure out, well, then what does the other options look like? And so if I can't fetch big sums for my business, or I want to build plan Bs and plan Cs and options so that I'm not solely relying on my business to be sold, then perhaps I need to take a look at, how much cash I have. Am I going to put away some savings? Am I going to put it in GICs, bonds? Am I going to buy mutual funds or segregated funds? Am I going to own stocks? Am I going to buy real estate? Or am I going to own other types of businesses or have shares and stocks in other alternative investments? So those are all different areas that I can grow my investments. And the idea that when we work with clients is to figure out, based on projections of in the future, this is how much I need on a yearly basis, then I need to grow my investment mix. I need to grow my asset size to a certain size so that it can generate this type of income for me. So again, all these different types of investments have different features and characteristics. And so it's about making sure that we have the right mix of each to fit, your time frame and to fit, your risk profile, so to say, and then to also tailor with how your business is going to exit. Yeah. So the second step 2 here, again, is just to grow your investment portfolio as an alternative so that you are not solely relying on your business to provide you 100% of your income. Okay, so the third thing to consider is, I would say, to figure out how much is enough. So often I find that for many business owners, this is a bit of a tough question, because is more always better? And so sometimes more feels like it could be better. However, I would say that, there is a trade-off between, accumulating so much that eventually it adds complexity, and maybe it's just, sometimes it's not even, like you can always get it bigger and bigger, but is that really what you're looking for? So often this is a question that I ask, is like, well, how much is enough? What's your finish line? And so if we can determine, even a range of values or what that looks like, a picture of what that looks like, then we can reverse engineer and figure out, what needs to be put where, so that when you are closer to your, so that you're closer to that date when you have the flexibility to make a change in your business. I don't even consider retirement a word that we use. And so this is all about not necessarily about retiring from your business, but it's about giving you options so that in the future, running your business is actually, it's an asset that, that creates value for you, rather than you have to work in that job. So in order to supplement, the business income, these are a couple of the, again, income sources that you may consider in your retirement. So often in our work with clients, we take a look at one day. If you want to stop working in your business or want to, do something different, how much funds or income are you going to get from government benefits, from maybe spouse's pension plan, or your own old work pension plans, or work RSPs before, and how much do we need to put away for RSPs, TFSAs, non-registered funds? Are those in the personally invested? Are we investing it in the corporation? Are we using investments? Are we using insurance? Do we have passive income coming in from business ventures? Do we have rental incomes from real estate? Or, in many cases, as people are thinking about the next season, sometimes they even have a part-time gig. I call that, sometimes it's consulting, because they just have so much wisdom and so much experience built up, and often it might be a waste for them to just retire. So they could often, still continue to work a little bit to pass time and do things that they love, but at least their income is not solely based on just the job, but it's a blend of all these different things. So I find that if you for business owners, if they have thought about these two areas, then again we talked about the just really the more important thing is having a vision for the future. So the third circle, which is this orange color, personal family circle, what we are looking at is what I would suggest for you to consider is the fourth strategy is to work out your vision for you. And so it's not about what other people say, or that by freedom 55 or freedom 60, by the time I retire at this stage I should be able to sell it. Really, I find for most entrepreneurs, you have the ability to have designed this business or this work that you love. And so perhaps it's about thinking about the next season. Who are the people that matter the most to you? Who do you want to spend more time with? What activities do you want to do more of, less of? What do you want your legacy to be? If once a business is sustainable, is scalable, is profitable, then when we can do more, I find that the art of allocating profit is an art. It's less of a science. Once we have enough, then it's up to it's up to us in a way to manage and to think about what could we use the funds for. And so I find that for many, once they have paid themselves enough, there's enough for them to retire, then the questions sometimes change to, well, how can I help others? Can I help my family? Can I help my children? Can I help my grandchildren? Can I help my community? Can I contribute to my church? Can I contribute to these charitable causes that I love? So in a way, for business owners, often you have the gift of multiplication, I say. So they have the talent to be able to grow things and to make money. And often I think that those funds are a great investment into the things that they care about, into the causes that they care about. And so in a way, for some of my clients, they continue to grow their businesses, not because they need the money, but because the funds from the business can be used to support the causes that they love. So that often, comes back to legacy. And again, and I think this is an area that is often not talked about a lot, but if we could spend some time just wrestling with and thinking about these questions, having a vision for the next chapter of your life would often then give you the motivation to make sure that you are doing all the things for your existing business very well, so that you can pass it on, so that it runs well, even if you're not there full time. Yeah. So then a question to think about is, what are your main concerns when it comes to the future, when it comes to your role, what you want to do? What do you think needs to happen in order for you to, be able to spend more time with the people that matter to you, do the things that you care more about, and do the things that are more important to you? Yeah. So that is also, coming back, that this is really a third part of the circle to consider in order to shift it from just doing a job to, making sure that your business is becoming an asset for you. So, what are the next steps then? So I think the question to consider now is, well, how important is it for you to have a plan? And so perhaps, is today still about fighting fires and focusing on the things that are more pressing? Or, do we want to allocate some office hours, I call it, to work on things that are important but not urgent yet? So what needs to happen in your business this year, next year, 3 years from now, in order for you to move towards this vision? What is the next step in your personal financial planning in order for you to shift your asset mix or grow it so that your income sources can be diversified in the future? Something to think about. And maybe a bit tongue-in-cheek, who can give you answers to these questions? So sometimes I find that when clients come and work with us, they have a whole bunch of these questions, and it's quite overwhelming, and it's very hard to think about, what do I do next? And so often you know, I find that what we end up doing with clients is because just with our background in business coaching, in engineering, in also in financial planning, and when all those things are married, know that the reason why perhaps it's been hard or it's been confusing or not very clear, it's just because that, actually doing this work well, transitioning from a job to an asset, requires coordination of many areas of financial planning. And so, the process that we go through helps clients connect the dots. How does my business finances tie to my personal finances? If I make a certain amount of this year, how much should I pay myself? How much should I leave in the company? What should I invest it in? And how do I protect my loved ones? Do I have enough? How much do I need to put away to have enough in the future? And then how do I deal with the extra? How do I shift my time? What should I focus on in your business? So you can see how with Clarity, we support clients to help them connect the dots, to prioritize what to work on, and to understand why and how to make these decisions and how to order the steps. And so hopefully that's been helpful for, to give you a framework to consider. And so to find out more, please feel welcome to check out clarityplanning.ca. And our hope is that we can support you to, make smart and approachable strategies for your financial life. Thank you.